It all began for me, a junior in high school at the time, inside the four walls of my English classroom. There were 20 of us in that classroom, tired but curious souls doing all that we could to keep our eyes open at what felt like the crack of dawn. Our teacher was an eccentric woman, and it was self-evident from her loud-colored shawls to her glowing jewels, pearls, and stones. She was exactly what you would expect from an English teacher who could change your life, for better or for worse. We sat each morning in her windowless classroom in the lower level of our high school. Fluorescent lights up above us cast a dim yellow glow upon the room, and her stiff-backed chairs did much to posture us upright, as if to remind us that the ideas we were to encounter in her class are to be engaged with seriously. Indeed, her classroom was a funny-looking jail cell, and she knew it too. Where I sat, right above my head, was a giant picture of Moby Dick. And there were some mornings I thought I knew the terror that Captain Ahab must have felt in chapter 133 when the sun eclipsed by the visage of a giant whale was the final thing that he saw before he was dragged to his demise. And all around us, the great quotes and ideas of authors and philosophers and thinkers adorned the walls. And so it was in our junior year that our teacher decided that we would read all of the great works of literature that characterized the Western canon, so that as we read through this pantheon of giants, we arrived at F. Scott Fitzgerald, whose pen gave us The Great Gatsby, the quintessential story of American ambition. Thinking back on it now, I wonder if my teacher knew the enormity of that selection for us, much less for myself. Because in this next year, this word ambition would be what we use to describe ourselves on our college applications. It would be the word that we asked our recommenders to describe us as, and it would be the word with which we justified our lofty and wishful future plans. As we read The Great Gatsby, we became familiar with the world in which the real Fitzgerald and the fictional Jay Gatsby lived. A world characterized by material success and social climbing. A world, you could say, very similar to ours today. And I still remember the scene after Gatsby's violent death where Nick Carraway, the narrator, and Mr. Gatz, Gatsby's father, are having a colloquy in which Mr. Gatz describes the man that his son could have been were it not for his ambition. And that was the first time that I encountered the idea of ambition as an instinct towards greatness. You see, much of my class and even many of us here today have grown up hearing all about the notion of the American dream, that if we aspire to success in this great country, and if we have the means and the ability to execute on our dreams, that the treasure chest of opportunity might open itself up to us for even a moment. But it was in reading The Great Gatsby that I had a different epiphany. That the person who aspires begins by looking outside, and the person who is ambitious begins by looking inside. The tale of ambition is a tale as old as time itself. Adam and Eve, as some translations tell us, caused the fall of mankind due to their ambition. And if there is a story in any of the world's religions that is most representative of the idea of ambition, it would be the story of the Tower of Babel, where the people of Shinar said, "Go to, let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven." And the story goes on to describe how God did there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Elsewhere around the world, we see the danger of ambition manifest in the stories of other belief systems. Gilgamesh, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, resolved to instantiate his name where as of yet no man's name has been written. Icarus, son of Daedalus, longed for one draught of flight to quench the thirst of his captivity. In literature, we see the danger of ambition destroy the lives of great men and great women. Shakespeare, in his day, did much to form the literary perspective of ambition. In Hamlet, dreams are indeed ambition, for the very substance of the ambitious is merely the shadow of a dream. In Macbeth, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. And in Julius Caesar, the knife-plunging Brutus says of his friend, "But as he was ambitious, I slew him." Or we can look to the revolutions and the moments that brought humankind forward and see that it was individual ambition manifested collectively that brought us the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, the scientific and industrial revolutions, leading Adam Smith to say, individual ambition serves the common good. Or we can consider the thinkers, Nietzsche, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Lao Tzu, Aristotle, people who toiled for centuries to frame our conceptualizations of ambition, leading Machiavelli to conclude, what province or what city escapes it? Everywhere, ambition and avarice penetrate. And lo, we see the long arc of ambition even extend into our present day. Coney 2012, where ambitious filmmaker Jason Russell alerted the public consciousness to the heinous crimes committed by Ugandan dictator Joseph Kony. So much so that he roused the public's desire to see his 2013 arrest. However, under the weight of newfound visibility and responsibility, Jason Russell suffered a psychosis and his organization was no more. How about Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos, the youngest female self-made billionaire, whose ambition it was to solve the world's ills that led to one of the largest corporate scandals in modern history? In education, we see the ambition of wealthy parents to see their children placed in America's great institutions of learning bring us the college admissions scandal. And so in a sense, we've gathered all of the prominent threads that weave through the ambition narrative, and we're left to ask, what is ambition? Is it an instinct towards greatness, or is it the road that leads to destruction? And as I've thought about this, I think that the answer resides in how we define greatness. I think of greatness as four things: accolades, achievements, actualization, and contribution. Accolades are how society recognizes greatness. We bestow upon the greatest among us all of the spoils of fame, the riches of accomplishment, and the honor to be had in recognition. Achievements are what happen when we succeed in the things that we resolve to do. And certainly these achievements can be richly personal, yes, but the ambitious tend to pursue things of collective and social value. Actualization refers to the idea that Abraham Maslow put forward in the 1940s, that to actualize is to become more and more that which one is, to become all that one is capable of becoming. And finally, contribution refers to the notion of the magnum opus, that we can take all of our education, our experience, and our creativity and channel it into one thing that we give back to the world. And so with this concept fleshed out, we can see that there's a deadly gap that forms for the dangerously ambitious. The dangerously ambitious only focus on accolades and achievements. They lose out on actualization, which is to say they lose themselves in their pursuits. And their contribution is not excellence, but destruction. That's what became clear to me as I read The Great Gatsby, that dangerously ambitious people do not ask, who am I becoming? And what will I leave behind me? Here's another way to think about this. Imagine that your potential is a path that you walk, and that ambition is the force that compels you to continue forward on that path. The danger of ambition is when we use accolades and achievements as the guideposts along that invisible path, such that it either leads us astray or causes us to stop short of who we could become or what we could do. But the journey of ambition is when we come to the end of ourselves and continue to walk in order to discover what might be left to find. And so while I'm here on this stage talking to all of you about the danger of ambition, I must admit that this is also a message to myself. Because the fear that lives in the heart of every person who would truly regard themselves as ambitious is the very real possibility that my name, that your name, that our names might be added to the long list of those before us who have fallen due to ambition. It's easy to discuss ambition as something that exists outside the realm of our experience. That is, until it reaches our locality, either in ourselves or in someone that we know. And so it did for me. This past year, I worked for one of the best consulting firms in the world, and I remember after a late night client engagement, I was in an Uber headed back to my hotel, and my Uber driver asked me what I was doing in such a big city like Chicago all by myself. And so I replied with what my dreams were and the degrees I had yet to obtain, the career that I wanted, and the things that I wanted to do when I was older. Such a long answer to a simple question. And he looked up at me through his interior mirror and he gave me a soft smile. He looked up at me and he said, "Son, I used to be just like you. I used to be just like you. I had aspirations and ambitions and things that I wanted to do until I woke up from that dream. I woke up from that dream and I looked around me to see that all that I had were the vain glories associated with the pursuit of something inherently empty. And so he said to me, 'Son, don't forget what I told you here today. Don't forget the example that my life provides.' And I can't say that I did. So, what are we to say for ambition? Is it worth it to want to be great, to make our lives significant, to have an impact, to endeavor, is it worth it? I think that the answer is yes. The poet Dean Young would say that the failure is not to fall, but to fall from no height. And I would add my own formulation onto that idea. That the height of our ambitions make them worth the journey, and certainly worth the fall. For it is better to fall, having your ambitions, than it is to fall with your ambitions having you. Thank you.